Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored to be here. I had never been called a sponsor before. It's the first time. So as you said, Matthew, SCIC has had a very strong and intimate relationship with ORCID since its creation, it's true. But today I'd like to talk to you about our own projects, our latest projects around the speech repository. So as Matthew said, I suppose most of you know the speech repository and use it. For those who don't know it, so the speech repository is a collection of around 3,500 speeches, real speeches and pedagogical speeches prepared by trainers, and we hope so at least, adapted for conference interpreting, teaching and practicing. Those who are most familiar with that tool will know that the speech repository has two different parts. One, public access, and the other, which is restricted, which we called My Own Speech Repository, to which only partner universities and their students and trainers have access. You know, you have to, I hope you know, you have to create your own ECAS password, and then when you get access, you have access to functionalities which you don't have in the public part. You can download speeches, and you can upload interpretations, and you can share those interpretations. So I would like to start my presentation, and before talking about those latest projects, by showing you a very short tutorial we did very recently in SCIC about the use of one of the functionalities that exist in my speech repository, which is SCICREC. SCICREC is a recording tool which allows you actually to upload one speech from the speech repository, to record an interpretation, and then to share it with your trainers or with your fellow students. And so I'd like to start by showing that very short tutorial. Yep, thank you.
Hello. In this video, we would like to explain and explore the possibilities offered by My Speech Repository and SCICREC, our recording tool. We will show you how to record an interpretation of a speech, how to share it with your friends, and how to ask them for feedback. But before we start, there are a few things you'll have to do. First of all, you'll have to log in to My Speech Repository. Remember, you need to create an ECAS account to log in. If you want to practice with someone, you'll need to add friends in My Speech Repository, but you can also practice on your own if you prefer. In order to record an interpretation, you need SCICREC, our recording tool. You can download it here and install it on your computer. It's fast and easy. So let's get started with your interpretation exercise. If you've received an invitation from your teacher or another student, you can accept the invitation and download the speech directly.
Hello, my name is Guy Laycock.
Otherwise, you can download any speech from My Speech Repository which you would like to interpret. Next, open SCICREC. Don't forget your headsets and microphone. Now find your speech. Remember, you can record both consecutive and simultaneous interpretation. Click on one of the buttons and off you go. Now you can start recording.
Hello, my name is Guy Laycock.
By the way, remember that for simultaneous interpretations, the video has to run until the end in order to record properly. Once you've finished, go back to the My Speech Repository website and upload your recording. Check that you choose the right file, the one with your recorded interpretation. Then, Depending on the recording type, choose either simultaneous or consecutive interpretation. You can already ask your friends for feedback at this stage if you want. It is possible to ask more than one friend for feedback at once. Shortly afterwards, you can find your interpretation exercise ready in My Recordings. Listen to your performance and the original at the same time. In one audio channel, you will have the original, and in the second one, you will hear your voice. Your recordings are stored on the server as long as you want to keep them. 6 months after your account expires, all data will be deleted. Do you want to know what your friends think about it? Ask them for feedback and start a chat. Even if you ask more than one person to give you feedback, the conversation will always be confidential and on a one-to-one basis. So, there you have it. SkikRec helps you improve your interpretation skills whenever you want and with whoever you want. Hello. In this video, we would like to explain and explore the possibilities offered by MySpeech Repository and SkikRec, our recording tool.
Okay, and then to the... Yeah. Okay, so this video is available on the site of the Speech Repository if you want to see it again, and if you want to have it, you just have to contact me. I'll be very glad to send it to you. So now I'd like to talk to you about two projects that have to do precisely with this world of the MySpeech Repository, and one of them very concretely with this tool, which is SkikRec. So our first project is the Entities project. I'll explain very briefly what an entity is, who can create those entities, how those entities are managed, and how speeches, the members of the entities can accede to speeches. Okay, so an entity is actually a private collection of speeches within MySpeech Repository. What does this mean? It means that our partner universities have the possibility of creating their own speech repositories within the space of the speech repository. And these banks of speeches, these private banks of speeches, will have all the functionalities of MySpeech Repository. So you will have SkikRec, you will have the possibility of downloading speeches and uploading interpretations. It will be a private space within MySpeech Repository. And those entities can be created by more than one university. I mean, you can create a collection of speeches to which students of your own university or of another university, of other two universities, can have access. So you can have cross-university entities. So this is an entity. If you want a speech repository inside MySpeech Repository. And who can create those entities? Only institutions that already have access to MySpeech Repository. Not only universities that are on our list of partner universities and who already have been granted access to MySpeech Repository. Universities, but also institutions and other organizations. And As it is said here, SCIC's approval is necessary. But in fact, SCIC's approval is a formality, because if you are already a member of, or if you have already access to my speech repository, we just need to click in a button, on a button, and give you the possibility of creating that entity. So how does, for you universities, how does all this work? You know that each university has a delegate as one contact person for my speech repository. And it is that contact person, which is called the delegate, who should take the initiative of contacting us and saying, we want to create a new entity. We want to create a new speech bank. And after SCIC's approval, it will be this delegate who will define roles in this bank. Like for my speech repository, there will be an administrator, there will be an editor, and there will be members. And these roles have different types of access. An administrator will be able to manage members and speeches, will be able to assign roles. An editor will be able to upload speeches, to comment speeches, to add keywords, to grade speeches. And members have access, simple and the most basic form of access. Of course, it's possible that a same person has multiple roles. And then the administrator and the editor also have a very important role. They define the status of speeches. You know, those who use a speech repository, of course, they only see speeches that are online. But you know that speeches can be on and be part of that bank, being offline or being public or restricted access. And in my speech repository, it's us, administrators, who define the status of speeches. It would be the same in these new entities. The administrator and the editor can decide which speeches are offline, which speeches are online, which speeches can be seen by all members of the entity, and which speeches can be seen only by some members of the entity. So this is our second project. I will make a brief pause here. So this is a project that, I'm talking about entities, that was part of the project of SR20. You know that the speech repository has now a new version since 2014. And we had some questions about, from some universities who were asking grants for creating their own speech banks. And we thought that we could, instead of giving grants to universities, we could maybe use this project to give universities that possibility, but within my speech repository. Of course, I'm talking about universities because we are here among university teachers and students, but this project is also useful for other organizations and even for other units and other directions within SCIC. And actually, one of the uses of this project, this entities project, will be to allow our colleagues from Directorate A to store the speeches that are used for their own purposes. So this is entities. I don't know if you have any questions about this project. I don't know if it was clear, because of course I'm talking about things that I know well. It's not always simple to explain in a clear way things that which you are working with every day. No questions? Yes, please.
The languages are, besides English, for the speeches.
All languages. You know, you're talking about the languages of speeches that are currently on the speech repository?
Yes.
Yes, on the speech repository.
The videos, I mean, they are only in English or?
No. You mean the videos that are part of the speech of my speech repository right now? No, you have all community languages, and you have other languages as well, like Russian, Chinese, Turkish, Arabic. No, it's not only English. It wouldn't be very useful. No. Yes?
I wondered whether there are any space limitations for the entities.
That's a very good question, which I won't be able to answer. I don't think you have very important space limitations. But I really can't answer your question. That's, to be honest. But I'll check at home, and I'll give you the answer by mail. Yes, Svetlana.
Suggest that can we ask questions at the end after your presentation?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Because people want to ask more questions.
Okay. So, I'll talk now about the second project, which we're calling here Téléparrainage, because we haven't found yet a right word in English to designate it. Maybe you could help us with that. So what is this Téléparrainage? How does it work? And who can take part? It's also a project that will work within this universe of speech repository, my speech repository, and SkikRec. So this program, its objective is to put in contact students and professional interpreters and trainers from the institutions, from DigiSkik, actually. Of course, you can tell me they are already in contact, because we do PA missions, we do virtual classes, we do lots of things. But the thing is that in virtual classes and in PA assignments, your students and our interpreters are in contact, it's true, but for a very short period of time. During a virtual class, they can see our trainers for 2 hours, but the contact between our trainer and each student lasts maybe for, 10 minutes? But not more. During a PA mission, yes, our PA assistant may stay for a week. But after that week, it's over. We thought that maybe it would be interesting that your students and our trainers, who are also professional interpreters who work in the booth every day, could have a regular contact. Part of that contact would be the sharing of speeches and interpretations through SkikRec and my speech repository. So, in order to be part of this program, students, and let's call them tutors from DigiSkik, have to become friends in my speech repository so that the contact is possible. And how would it work? I have to tell you, this is a project, and contrary to the Entities project, which is virtually technically ready, it should be ready on technical terms now by the end of September, beginning of October. This other project is still it's not so advanced yet. So we are thinking about it, we are reflecting, and we are coordinating with our colleagues in other directions in SkikRec, because of course there has to be a coordination, there has to be a consultation. So how would this function? speeches, we would create an entity within my speech repository in which speeches would be regularly published. And students would be regularly warned that speeches were available to record interpretations. They should record their interpretations with SkikRec and share them with their tutors in order to have feedback. So our tutors, our trainers, our interpreters would regularly send feedback on students' performances. That's not, I have to be honest, that's not the main or the only objective of this project. As I said at the beginning, the idea is that there is a regular contact. And for me, that regular contact should go beyond this performance evaluation. You know, if the student has a doubt on some detail of technique of consecutive or simultaneous technique, if he has a doubt on the way our ACI tests work or something else, he could have the possibility of contacting in an informal way his or her tutor. So of course, SkikRec does not give you the answer for this because you can't have this kind of contact with SkikRec. SkikRec is a recording device only. So what we see for this program is that the contact through my speech repository and SkikRec should be complemented with other social media like Facebook, like WhatsApp, like Google Hangouts, like, I'm not saying Skype, because as you know, Skype is forbidden in the Commission, so not Skype. But the other means of contact that could complete and complement the contact through SkikRec and My Speech Repository, where the contact you have is basically feedback on a performance. So who can take part? Of course, students from our partner universities who have access to My Speech Repository, and of course, all My Speech Repository users. So I want to be very clear on this. This project is still, being studied and being discussed internally in SKIC. There are several things that have to be cleared, have to be clarified. For instance, what kind of assignment will those tutors have? You know that in the Commission and in Parliament there is a program and interpreters are on a program and they have to have an assignment. They can't just, walk in the stratosphere and do things that no one knows about. So what kind of assignment would those tutors have? And of course, we have to also know if there are volunteers in our service to do this work, because I happen to know that there are some volunteers because we have talked about this project and some colleagues have already addressed to me and say, yes, I'd like to do that. But I also had one, a very experienced trainer who said to me, well, I like training very much, but this thing of informal contact, of being there, of being friends in Facebook, that I don't like. So don't count on me. So, there are different sensibilities, and we have to know with whom we can count. And of course, we have also to define which are our priorities, which languages would be priority, which pairs of languages would be priority. Do we have a critical mass of volunteers to cover those language combinations? Of course, you can imagine that the situation is very different in a big booth like the English language unit or the French language unit or the German language unit, or in the Latvian language unit, or the Maltese language unit, which are very small booths. So there are several things that still have to be discussed within SKIC, but we are looking for a university which would be interested in being our oh, I can't remember the word in English, cobaye, our, sorry? Guinea pig, our guinea pig during the second semester of this year, because we would like to run a pilot project with this project during the second semester, starting in February, in next February. There's a last thing I would like to tell you, that I forgot to tell you about the first project, Entities. So, the possibility for universities to create speech banks within My Speech Repository. That is the following. Yes, we are very glad to collaborate with universities and to give them that possibility, but we would like the scheme to work both ways. And we would like that universities would accept a moral obligation to share those speeches with the speech repository when their speeches are no longer of use to the universities. When some speeches have been used several times and all the students know them, and they are. If you don't have any use for those speeches anymore, so they should go to My Speech Repository. We are not going to set limits and to say to universities you have to give us 10 speeches per year, or decide we are taking this speech. No, that won't happen. But we would like that this moral obligation should be part of this agreement between the universities and ourselves. Okay, I hope I have not exceeded my half hour, but looking at Svetlana, I... Okay, thank you very much for your attention. So, question time? No? Okay. Are there any questions? Please, yeah.
Hi. I was wondering, could I, as an ACI, create an entity into which I invite students from different universities? Because you were telling that speak-approved universities could create entities.
Mm-hmm.
Or could I be invited into different entities from different universities?
Are you a My Speech Repository user? Are you an ACI?
Yes.
I think so, yes.
Okay. Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
And the second question, now that I have a microphone, thank you very much. About the téléparrainage.
Yes.
I can imagine that your resources are limited regarding the number of hours staff could be working on this. Would you then prioritize according to the language combination of the students, or would you be giving the same attention to every language students?
No. I think I said, but maybe I was not clear. No, of course, it would be according to our own priorities.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we can't do that. We can't do that. It would be according, and that's something that still has to be cleared. What is maybe our A language priorities, or what are our A language priorities, and what are our language combinations? No, it would be according to our own priorities. Yeah. Yes? Yes, yes.
Thank you. Fernando, the usual question about, it's the first project entity. So when you allow the universities to upload their speeches or propose their speeches, how is it self-censoring, the quality? Who decides on whether
the universities?
The universities decide.
We don't interfere. We don't grade. We don't. There's no censorship, of course. No. The universities. Universities upload. Universities decide.
And you trust that you have entrusted them, so you think the quality will be adequate. So
but we are not responsible for the quality of private entities, We try to be responsible for the quality, I hope we manage, for the quality of speeches that are inscribed in My Speech Repository, in Speech Repository. And of course, when I was talking about that moral obligation, of course it may happen that universities give and share with us speeches that we decide that they don't have the quality, the technical quality, or in content terms also, that they are not adapted for us. It can happen. But we don't interfere in quality criteria of speeches that only are in private entities. We don't interfere, we don't decide. It's for the universities to decide.
Okay, thank you. And my next question, or comment rather, is with the universities' reluctance, reticence to offer the speeches that I already have in their own repositories. Well, all I can say from experience is that if you give a big call to the wider world to say, please send us your speeches, you probably won't get any. But you said you have delegates or designated persons your contact. You need to speak to a person in a university to persuade the universities to release those speeches. I mean, that is the crux of the matter.
Yes, but I hope I didn't say, maybe I said, but I didn't think it. I hope I didn't say that universities were reluctant to give us speeches. I didn't think it, at least, because, among other things, you have sitting next to you the ex-president of the MCI, and the MCI has been extremely generous over the years, sending us speeches. And when I say extremely generous, is around 100 per year in several languages. So I'm not saying that universities are reluctant to send, because when they are contacted, in general, as you say, they answer. And so no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. No. No. Yes, please.
Hello. Yeah. Thanks for your presentation. Coming back to the title of your presentation, if I can find it. Yeah. Stakeholders' contribution, and you as head of e-learning. Could you tell us about protocols in the future to see how you are going to take the stakeholders' contributions, that is, feedback from universities, feedback from students in terms of what they are using your speeches for, what they would like to see more of in the future, what the use of the SCIC-REC we are using. What are the protocols for the future? Because that's where the key question of stakeholders' contribution is.
So what you're asking is, do we have means, do we receive any feedback on the use? We do. We have statistics regarding the use. For instance, I can tell you, we have statistics, that's the first thing. For SCIC-REC, SCIC-REC has been maybe the most famous unknown device for years, because this exists for years, since the creation of the speech repository. And for years, no one knew about it, and virtually no one used it. I mean, why? I don't know why, but that's the fact. This year, we had an increase, but a spectacular increase in numbers. I can't give you the precise numbers, but it's maybe from 16 to 70. Which is a considerable increase. But of course, the level was very low. So even with that increase, the level of views, especially if you compare it with the levels of views of the public part, for which we also have statistics, are still very low. But to answer your question, we do have statistics. Now, about feedback from the users. Feedback from the users about what? The speeches, the rating of the speeches, about what precisely?
For example, quality of the speeches, the setting of a context of where the speech is done for, or even for this teleparrainage that you are setting up.
No, for that we don't.
If you have developed future protocols for quality and for measuring, how is it going to work? Like, are you meeting with the reps of every university to hear from them? Do you
But
have
this is
protocols
not,
for that?
this is not working yet. Of
Yeah,
course,
but
we
what I
will
mean
have-
is if you have designed protocols.
Yeah,
for
we
that.
will have feedback, of course. We'll have means of, we do that for every tool. Yes, and to answer your question about the speech repository, yes, we have feedback from the users, and most of the feedback comes, regards the level, the grading of the speeches. And very often, users do not agree with the grading that has been done of the speeches. Sometimes they think a speech which was graded as intermediate should be advanced, or the other way around. I have to tell you that this is a very difficult question. It's a question which took us much time and resources trying to. We are not going to solve that, but you know, the grading is a very lengthy process in the unit in which I work, because each speech, before it appears on the speech repository, is graded by 2 trainers. And those trainers, they have to have that language as a C language. And their A language shouldn't be from the same family. So to give you an example, a German speech, we will have, for instance, a Portuguese grader, but the second grader shouldn't be Spanish. He should be English or Finnish or something like that. And if there's disagreement between the 2, we ask for a third. So the speeches are just not put like that in the speech repository. There's a procedure before that. But even so, we get comments about the gradings. But I think that there's also a misunderstanding there, because I think the criteria are not exactly the same between universities and institutions. And of course, what concerns me is that the users find incoherencies when our own system is used. You know, that our own system, because our system of grading is public. We have a document which has circulated among the universities with the criteria for the grading of speeches. And of course, what I wouldn't like to see is speeches, according to those criteria, wrongly rated. But I suspect that most cases, the cause is not there. The cause is that the criteria are not exactly the same between universities and ourselves. And so we will never solve that problem of having exactly the same grading. And we will have always divergences and disagreements between the gradings. But I don't think that's serious. What worries me is that users find that our own set of criteria is being wrongly applied. That's what worries me. We also have another idea, which is to make public a double grading in the speech repository, and actually to have a field where the users could make public their own gradings, and actually to have both gradings, our own and the user's grading. But of course, that's also a project, and as you know, in public administrations, when money is involved, things take a very, very long time. So this one will take a long time too.
I'm afraid we're out of time.
Sorry. Thank you very much.